Here's something that sounds impossible. There is a legal account in America where your investments grow and the government never touches a single dollar of the profit. Not while it grows. Not when you pull it out. Congress built it on purpose back in 1997 with the Taxpayer Relief Act. Skip it in your 20s, and you could hand the IRS a six-figure tax bill you never owed. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how it works. And I'm not selling anything, just showing you the math. Most people assume every investment gets taxed. You buy something, it grows, you sell, and the government takes a slice. In a normal brokerage account, that's true. Long-term gains get taxed up to 20% plus state tax on top. So the story you've been told is simple. Making money means sharing it with Uncle Sam forever. But that story has a gaping hole in it, and it's been sitting in the tax code for over 25 years. It's named after a senator from Delaware named William Roth. Most people have heard the words Roth IRA and quietly filed them under boring adult stuff to deal with later. That instinct is quietly costing them more than almost any other money mistake. Part of why people skip it is the name itself. Roth IRA sounds like paperwork. It sounds like something your accountant handles or something you get to at 40 when you're finally serious. That framing is the expensive part. Every year you wait is a year of tax-free compounding you can never get back. So let me strip it down to plain English. IRA just means individual retirement account, a special bucket you put money into for retirement. Roth is just the flavor. The deal is this: you put in money you've already paid income tax on, and in return, every dollar of growth comes out completely tax-free later. Strip away the jargon, and tax-free growth means something concrete. In a taxable account, every time your fund pays a dividend or you sell at a profit, a bill comes due. Inside a Roth, those bills simply never arrive. Your money compounds on the full amount year after year with nothing skimmed off the top. Compare that to the traditional version. A traditional IRA or your 401k at work gives you a tax break today. You skip the tax now, but the IRS waits patiently. When you retire and pull the money out, they tax all of it, your contributions and decades of growth. The Roth flips that deal upside down. The idea is older than most people think. Back in 1989, two senators, William Roth of Delaware and Bob Packwood of Oregon, proposed something they called the IRA Plus. The concept was simple but radical. Pay your tax now while it's small and never pay it again. Politicians liked it because taxing money up front made the budget look better on paper. It became real law on August 5, 1997, when President Bill Clinton signed the Taxpayer Relief Act. That was the first broad federal tax cut in 16 years. The Roth IRA officially opened to savers in 1998, and the contribution limit back then was just $2,000 a year. Tiny by today's standards, but the machine was built. The launch wasn't perfectly smooth either. The very next year, Congress had to pass a Technical Corrections Act just to clarify how that 5-year rule worked. Even the lawmakers who built it needed a second pass to iron out the wrinkles, which tells you how easy it is for regular people to trip over the fine print. The account has grown more generous over the years, too. It launched in 1998, letting you save $2,000 a year. By 2008, that climbed to $5,000. In 2025, it's $7,000, or $8,000 if you're 50 or older. And in 2026, the IRS bumps it again to $7,500 with an extra $1,100 catch-up for the over 50 crowd. The rules keep evolving. In 2019 and 2020, a law called the Secure Act made two big changes. It scrapped the old age limit, so you can now contribute at any age as long as you're earning income. But it also said most people who inherit these accounts must empty them within 10 years, closing a loophole that let heirs stretch tax-free growth across a lifetime. Let me make this real with someone. Meet Maya. She's 25, works as a dental hygienist, and earns about $45,000 a year. She's not rich, she's got student loans and rent like everyone else. But Maya decides to put $300 a month into a Roth IRA. That's $3,600 a year, invested in a simple index fund that tracks the whole U.S. stock market. Now here's what most people never picture correctly. Maya isn't putting in a fortune. $300 a month is one nice dinner out per week. But because she started at 25, she handed herself the one thing money can't buy back later: time. And time is the secret ingredient this account was designed to unleash. A lot of people freeze because they think they need thousands to start. You don't. Most major brokerages now let you open a Roth with no minimum and buy fractional shares with as little as $5. The barrier isn't money. It's the myth that you need more money than you actually have. When Maya opened hers, she didn't pick individual stocks or try to time anything. She bought one broad index fund, a single fund that owns a slice of hundreds of America's biggest companies. Low cost, hands-off, quietly tracking the whole market. That simplicity is a feature, not a weakness. The Roth rewards boring, consistent investing far more than clever trading. Let's run Maya's numbers. Say her investments average about 8% a year, roughly what the U.S. stock market has returned over the long haul before inflation. She keeps putting in $3,600 every year from age 25 to 65. That's 40 years. Over those 4 decades, Maya personally contributes $144,000 of her own money. Picture 2 identical buckets filling with water. Both start empty, both fill at the same rate. The only difference is a small hole near the top of one bucket. That's the tax leak in a normal account, draining a little every time you sell. The Roth bucket has no hole. Nothing leaks along the way, and nothing gets skimmed when you finally tip it over. Now watch what compounding does to that $144,000. By age 65, Maya's account grows to roughly $1 million. Read that again. She put in $144,000. She ends up with around $1 million. That gap, over $850,000, is pure investment growth. And here is the part that changes everything. In a normal account, that $850,000 of growth would get taxed when she sells. At a 15% long-term rate, that's roughly $128,000 handed to the IRS. In her Roth IRA, Maya owes exactly zero, not a dollar. The whole million is hers to spend. That $128,000 difference is the Roth doing its quiet work. Now let me show you what waiting costs, because this part stings. Say Maya doesn't start at 25. She waits until 35, just 10 years later, and puts in the exact same $3,600 a year. Instead of $1 million at 65, she ends up with roughly $440,000. That 10-year delay cost her over $500,000. Same monthly amount, same fund, just a later start. That's the brutal beauty of compounding. The dollars you invest in your 20s do the heaviest lifting because they have the most time to double and double again. A dollar invested at 25 might multiply into more than $20 by 65. The same dollar invested at 45 barely gets to quadruple. Let's check on Maya at the halfway mark, age 45. She's contributed $72,000 so far. Her account, around $270,000 already. She's not even close to done, but the growth has quietly overtaken her contributions. From here, the account starts earning more some years than she puts in. That's the tipping point every long-term investor is chasing. Now, if that sounds good for Maya, let me show you how far this thing can actually stretch, because someone took it to an extreme nobody imagined. In June 2021, the newsroom ProPublica revealed a document that stunned Washington. Picture the most powerful savings account in America, not worth thousands, not millions. Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, had built a Roth IRA worth roughly $5 billion. $5 billion with a B. Let that sit for a second. Because of how the Roth works, if Thiel followed the rules and waited until retirement age, that entire $5 billion could come out without a single dollar of federal income tax. On growth that size, the normal bill would run over $1 billion. Inside a Roth, it vanishes. He did it by buying startup shares for fractions of a penny inside the account, then letting them explode in value, all shielded. It's the same engine powering Maya's million. Same rules. Same tax-free growth. The only difference was the size of the seed. That revelation sparked a national fight about capping giant accounts. But the lesson for you isn't about billionaires. It's this. The account doesn't care how much you make. It cares how early you start. It cares how long you leave it alone. Here's the line worth remembering. A traditional account gives you a tax break you can see today. A Roth gives you a kind of freedom you'll feel for the rest of your life. So far we've talked about growth, But the Roth's real magic shows up in two other places most people never think about: when you need money early and when you're gone. Here's where the Roth gets even friendlier and where people get tripped up. Unlike most retirement accounts, a Roth lets you take out your own contributions, the money you put in, at any time, at any age, with zero tax and zero penalty. If Maya put in $20,000 over the years, she can pull that $20,000 back out if an emergency hits. Say Maya's car dies at 30 and she needs $8,000 fast. Because she's already contributed more than that, she can pull her own contributions out, tax-free, penalty-free, no questions asked. Try that with a 401k, and you'd face taxes plus a 10% penalty for withdrawing early. The Roth gives you an escape hatch most retirement accounts simply don't. But the growth is different, and this is the rule that trips people. To pull out the earnings tax-free, two things must be true. You have to be at least 59 and a half, and the account has to have been open for at least 5 years. That's the famous 5-year rule. Break it early, and the growth can get taxed and penalized. But wait, you might be thinking, what if I need the money before I'm old? That's a fair worry, and it's exactly why the Roth beats a locked box. Your contributions stay reachable. Only the profit is fenced off until retirement. It's flexible where it counts and strict where it should be. There's one more perk that quietly beats the traditional account. With a regular IRA or 401k, the government forces you to start withdrawing at a certain age. Those are called required minimum distributions. A Roth has none of those during your lifetime. You can let it grow untouched for as long as you like. That no forced withdrawals rule matters more than it sounds. With a traditional IRA, the government makes you start pulling money out in your 70s, whether you need it or not, triggering taxes each time. A Roth just sits there growing on your schedule. If you don't need it, your kids inherit an account that's already done its taxes. So, is the Roth always the winner? Honestly, no. And anyone who tells you it's a slam dunk is skipping the fine print. The whole thing hinges on one question nobody can answer for sure. Will your tax rate be higher or lower in retirement than it is right now? Think of it this way. The traditional account bets your tax rate will be lower later when you're retired and earning less. The Roth bets your tax rate will be higher later, or at least not lower. If you're young and early in your career, your tax rate today is probably the lowest it'll ever be. That's the classic case for paying now. So maybe the real question isn't traditional or Roth. Maybe it's this. Do you want to pay a small known tax today, or an unknown, possibly larger tax decades from now? Nobody knows what tax rates will look like in 2065. The Roth lets you lock in today's rate and stop guessing. Quick gut check before we go on. Think about your own tax bracket right now. Are you early in your career, sitting in one of the lower brackets? Hold that thought because it decides which version of this account is really built for you. If you're 24 and making $40,000, you're likely in a low bracket. The Roth is a strong fit. But if you're 50, in your peak earning years, in a high bracket, the upfront tax break of a traditional account might serve you better today. Same tool, different answer, depending entirely on where you stand. Let me put two people side by side. Sarah and Dan both start at 30, both earning the same, both saving $6,000 a year until 65. Sarah picks a Roth and pays her tax up front. Dan picks a traditional account and takes the tax break now. Both accounts grow to about $1.1 million. Here's the twist at the finish line. Dan still owes income tax on every dollar he withdraws. If he's taxed at 22% in retirement, that's roughly $240,000 gone. Sarah owes nothing. Same contributions, same growth, same market, but Sarah keeps $250,000 more, simply because of which box she checked at the start. There's a catch that surprises high earners, though. The Roth has income limits. Earn too much, and the IRS blocks you from contributing directly. Congress designed it as a middle-class vehicle, not a loophole for the wealthy. But in 2010, a rule change cracked that door wide open. On January 1st, 2010, lawmakers permanently killed the old $100,000 income limit on something called a Roth conversion. That opened a two-step move, nicknamed the backdoor Roth, where high earners fund a traditional account first, then convert it. The middle-class account became a billionaire's vault, which is exactly why lawmakers started debating caps after the Thiel story broke. So how does a regular person actually use this? 3 simple steps. First, open a Roth IRA at any major brokerage. It takes about 15 minutes online and costs nothing to open. Second, set up an automatic transfer, even if it's small. $50 a month beats waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. In 2025, you can put in up to $7,000 a year, or $8,000 if you're 50 or older. In 2026, that limit rises to $7,500. Third, and this is where people freeze, actually invest the money once it's inside. This is the mistake I made myself. In my mid-20s, I opened a Roth, funded it, felt responsible, and then let the cash sit there for 2 years doing nothing, because I didn't realize the account is just a container. You still have to buy the investments. So you've opened it, funded it, invested it. Sounds finished, right? Here's the piece most people skip. That 5-year clock I mentioned starts ticking the moment you make your first contribution. So even if you have no money to spare, opening the account today and putting in just a few dollars starts that clock early. That means a 22-year-old who parks $10 in a Roth right now and doesn't touch it again for years has still done something valuable. They've started the timer that unlocks tax-free growth later. The account rewards the simple act of beginning. And notice what Maya never had to do. She never had to beat the market. She never had to pick the next hot stock or watch the financial news every morning. She just started early, stayed consistent, and let a tax-advantaged account do what it was built to do. The strategy was almost boring, and that's precisely why it worked. Let me bring Maya back one last time. She never earned a big salary. She just started at 25, put in her $300 a month, invested it, and left it alone. 40 years later, she's sitting on roughly $1 million, and the IRS can't touch a cent of it. That's not luck. That's the tax code working exactly as designed. Remember that 6-figure tax bill I mentioned at the very start? For Maya, it was $128,000 she legally never had to pay. That's the difference between knowing this account exists and letting it sit in the later pile. None of this is financial advice. Just the math laid bare so you can make your own call. So here's my question for you. If you'd started a Roth at Maya's age 25, how much of that tax-free million would you be sitting on right now? Drop your number in the comments. I read every one.